Patrick Hicks Music Stories presents Every Grammys Ever, the 32nd Annual Grammy Awards, February 21st, 1990. So we've come to the end of another decade of the Grammys. We've got a new host this year, Gary Shandling, who makes a great joke about the ever more dominating technology of compact discs.
Compact discs are overtaking the business, of course, which is ruining my life because I make love to music and I cannot find 45s anymore.
The Grammys had actually kicked off the 80s by giving the Album of the Year award to Billy Joel's 52nd Street, which was actually the first album to ever be released on CD. And Billy Joel ends the decade with some big nominations too. His song We Didn't Start the Fire is nominated in both Song and Record of the Year. We also see in both categories The End of the Innocents by Don Henley, The Living Years by Mike and the Mechanics, and then in Song of the Year, the song Don't Know Much, which had been a hit by Linda Ronstadt and Aaron Neville, is nominated. And in Record of the Year, we see the song She Drives Me Crazy by Fine Young Cannibals nominated. But the winner in both categories is the Bette Midler song Wind Beneath My Wings. Now, Best New Artist tonight is a funny one. You see the first rapper to be nominated in the category, Tone Loc. You also see nominations for the Indigo Girls, Nina Cherry, Soul to Soul, but the winner, of course, was Milli Vanilli. They were the Best New Artist until November 20th of 1990 when the Recording Academy revoked their award. There was a big controversy when it was revealed that the two people we thought were Milli Vanilli were not actually the people singing on the record. And they didn't give it to anybody else, so technically, for only the third time in Grammy history, there is no Best New Artist for this year. Tonight, we also see the first televised rap category. Best Rap Performance is won by Young MC for the song Bust a Move. Flavor Flav from Public Enemy actually crashes the acceptance speech, although Young MC thanks him for breaking up the monotony. And this was a stacked category. You also had De La Soul's Me, Myself, and I, Public Enemy get their first nomination for Fight the Power, Tone Loc's Funky Cold Medina, and last year's winners DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince are nominated for the song I Think I Can Beat Mike Tyson, which they also performed that night. The Lifetime Achievement Awards are also pretty notable tonight. I don't usually talk about these, but this was a big year. You had Nat King Cole, Miles Davis, Vladimir Horowitz, and Paul McCartney, which is a little odd because his career is not done. He will continue being nominated for Grammys, including Album of the Year. But he gives a really nice acceptance speech thanking the rest of the Beatles, saying the best band in the world, thanks John, George, and Ringo for being beautiful people. And then he said, I'd like to thank you all for being in my dream. A couple months before this awards, they had also done a special called Grammy Legends in November 1989, which was different from the Lifetime Achievement Awards. It went to Liza Minnelli, Willie Nelson, Smokey Robinson, and Andrew Lloyd Webber. They gave another 4 of these in 1991, 1 in 92, 1 in 93, 2 in 94, then they skipped a couple years, did 98, 99, skipped some more, did 2003, and then it was over. And nobody ever explained sufficiently how the Grammy Legend Award was different from the Lifetime Achievement Award. And it doesn't really matter, but one of those is kind of odd. Liza Minnelli got the Grammy Legend Award, but never actually won any Grammys. In fact, in 1990 when she got this award, she'd never even been nominated for one. And a Grammy is the last award she needed to complete the EGOT, so she is considered a non-competitive EGOT since she got this honorary Grammy but never actually won a competitive one. Now here are the nominees for Album of the Year. This year you've got one young new band up against 4 veterans. The young new band is Fine Young Cannibals, who are nominated for The Raw and The Cooked. And the veterans are Bonnie Raitt, who gets her first Album of the Year nomination with her 10th album, Nick of Time. Don Henley from the Eagles gets his first solo nomination for The End of the Innocents. And then Tom Petty competes against himself. He's nominated for his solo album, Full Moon Fever, his first Album of the Year nomination, and for his supergroup, the Traveling Wilburys. They're nominated for their album, Traveling Wilburys Volume 1. Now, before we get to the winner, let's talk about some albums that were not nominated. Let's start with talking about Janet Jackson. She's one of the more iconic artists of the 1980s, and she hasn't got much recognition at the Grammys. She got some nominations at the 29th Awards, including for Album of the Year, but no wins, and she doesn't get much for her 1989 album, Janet Jackson's Rhythm Nation 1814. She does get a couple nominations, and she gets her first win, but it's in the category Best Music Video Long Form. But I don't even think that's the biggest snub of the night. I think the biggest snub is The Cure's Disintegration. The Grammys have a really big blind spot to alternative music. The Cure are one of the most important bands ever, and they only have 2 Grammy nominations in their whole career and no wins. In a similar vein are Pixies, hugely influential and no Grammy wins. They don't get anything for their album Doolittle. You also have De La Soul's album 3 Feet High and Rising. They do get that one nomination for Me, Myself, and I, but nothing for one of the most innovative and important hip-hop albums ever. Also nothing for another incredibly influential, important album, The Beastie Boys' Paul's Boutique. Both the Beastie Boys and De La Soul will get some recognition later on, but nothing for these 2 albums. Now also, obviously these albums were not going to get nominated, but we've got the beginnings of grunge. We've got Nirvana's Bleach, Soundgarden's Louder Than Love, and Mudhoney's Self-Titled. You've also got the first 9 Inch Nails album, Pretty Hate Machine, Faith No More's The Real Thing, and this one's kind of surprising because he will become a Grammy's favorite, Lenny Kravitz's Let Love Rule. And the Grammy for Album of the Year goes to...
Nick of Time!
Bonnie Raitt's Nick of Time. This was such a good story. Bonnie Raitt had had a long career but had never really been that commercially successful. She had been dropped from her record label, she'd gone through substance abuse issues. She'd never really had a breakthrough until this album that became this unexpected runaway success, going to #1 on the charts, selling millions of copies, and capping it all off with winning 3 Grammy Awards tonight, including for Album of the Year. It was great to see an overnight success for a 40-year-old woman who had been making albums for 18 years. So at the end of the 1980s, let's recap the Album of the Year winners. I think this decade is definitely better than the 60s, but I would say not as good as the 70s. They absolutely nailed it with some albums, Thriller, Joshua Tree, and then had some choices ranging from defensible to pretty strong, with John Lennon, Phil Collins, Paul Simon, George Michael, and even Bonnie Raitt. But then there are just some flat-out bad choices. Christopher Cross, Toto, and then Lionel Richie winning over Prince's Purple Rain, or Tina Turner's Private Dancer, or Bruce Springsteen's Born in the USA. That one kind of mars the decade for me. Not to mention all the stuff that wasn't even nominated that was completely ignored. There's some good, there's some bad. I think the Grammys are still in a pretty good place. But I've got to warn you, we are going into a decade that the Grammys absolutely blows. Some of the worst choices and upsets that they have ever made are coming up in the next 10 years. So thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time for the highs and lows of the 33rd Annual Grammy Awards in 1991.
Are you ready for the thing?